The initial response seemed to me to consist of a two-pronged fork. A withdrawal from preparations for the looming G8 meeting in Sochi and an instruction to government ministers to avoid the Paralympics in the same city of Sochi, but the Paralympians themselves will still be going. So behind the bellicose delivery of the Foreign Secretary, the question will remain of whether anything meaningful or substantial is actually being done in response to Vladimir Putin's perceived aggression. A complete change of gear now. And also, you can watch this bit of the programme for once. I've just turned on the lights in order to highlight the ebullient face of my studio guest this afternoon, Professor Brian Cox. I guess an overused phrase needs no introduction, as long as you put the professor bit on it, Brian, because if I left the professor bit off it, you would need an introduction. We'd have to say you're not the actor currently starring in The Weir in the West End. You are the scientist.
I saw an interview with him actually recently where he said that it's one of the bane of his life, I think, as he put it.
People keep coming up to her asking, how many stars are there? Yeah. And all that sort of thing. You're here chiefly to talk to us about the Queen Elizabeth Prize for Engineering. This is designed to do a number of things. I mean, obviously not least to find people who've achieved astonishing things in the field of engineering, but perhaps more pertinently for our purposes, it's you want to encourage younger people, and particularly girls, to look at engineering as a career prospect and, of course, as an academic pursuit.
Yeah, I should say that the Queen Elizabeth Prize, it's a Nobel Prize for Engineering. It was first awarded last year. I was involved in the judging panel last year. We awarded it for the World Wide Web, actually, which is a thing that you don't usually associate with engineering, but somebody had to engineer it. It's next year it'll be awarded again. It's awarded every 2 years. And what we can do, because it's an international prize, but because it's in Britain, we can use that. So it's a great advantage we have to promote engineering. Why would you need to? Well, the numbers are that we need about 1 million engineers in our economy by 2020, more, 1 million new engineers. And we graduate less than half that as apprentices and as graduates. And the big gap is in, as you said, women or girls going into engineering. So last year there were something like 28,000, nearly 30,000 boys applied to university to do engineering and less than 5,000 girls.
Why do you think that is?
Well, we did a survey actually of parents of young girls between the ages of 5 and 18. And we found that parents discourage girls actively from going into engineering. They think that girls should be encouraged to do art subjects, English, etc., which they should. They're good subjects to do. But it seems there's a huge discrepancy between the way parents talk to girls and tell them about the possibilities in science, engineering and boys.
Is it the word? I mean, going back to the sort of old Welsh railways, Jones the engineer, and phrases like, there's an idea that it's blue overalls and dirty hands.
I think it is. And one of the points that we're trying to get across is that engineering is also things like software engineering. As I said, the fact that we awarded it last year to the founders of the web, which has changed everydy's life.
What does the word mean then, the word engineer? Literally, I don't necessarily want the dictionary definition, but in the context of the Queen Elizabeth Prize.
Well, the prize is awarded for something, be it software or hardware, that's demonstrably already changed the world. And engineering does change the world, if you think about it. If you think about, we had applications last time from the designers of aircraft all the way through to the designers of microprocessors and the software in the web. So I think it's virtually everything that we take for granted in our civilization.
Someone who makes stuff.
Some engineer played a part in everything you take for granted, pretty much.
Forgive me if this is indicative of my own ignorance of the issue, but you're not an engineer.
No, I'm a scientist.
Thank God for that.
I tend to roll them together, scientists and engineers.
Yes, but you are about observing phenomena rather than creating things that do stuff.
That's a reasonable definition.
I'm doing my best, Brian.
The thing is, though, that they're intertwined.
Yes.
I mean, I work at CERN in Geneva, for example, the Large Hadron Collider. What are we doing there? We're trying to understand how the universe behaved a billionth of a second after the Big Bang because we're interested. We're curious. But we're using the biggest machine ever built in order to do it.
Of course.
So there's a symbiosis there, which is essential.
So a scientist without an engineer would be Galileo without a telescope?
Well, no, because he built the telescope, and that's engineering.
Yes. So he was an engineer as well.
And the glass was built in Venice, and that's engineering. Right, yes. The crafting of lenses is engineering.
And it's as old as humanity itself. It's just an attempt to understand and
I've just been filming a new series for the BBC, actually, and we filmed one of the first pieces of engineering, which is basically an obsidian spear point that had been crafted 280,000 years ago in the Rift Valley of Ethiopia. That's before Homo sapiens emerged. So it's this previous species, our ancestors Homo erectus, probably doing this. But it's aerodynamic. They were chiseling with different tools this thing which could, and it's been shown by looking at, again, engineers looking at the stresses and the fractures in these things. They know that they were thrown weapons and they were thrown at animals to use for hunting. That forms the basis of agriculture, essentially, which forms the basis of engineering in the Rift Valley over 250,000 years ago.
Crikey. You've gobsmacked me slightly when I said it's as old as humanity itself. I didn't expect you to come back with pre-humanity evidence of the theory. Remarkable. What's the new series about then? What is the...
It's called Human Universe. It's about... So it's partly cosmology, but it's asking questions like, how lucky are we to be here? You know, how fortunate are we that there was a planet such as Earth? But also the laws of nature themselves, which were forged billions or trillions of a second after the Big Bang. How precisely did those have to be set up in order to have life? I mean, set up's the wrong kind of word, of course. Sure, they obviously do permit life to exist in the universe, but how fortunate are we?
Are you at the stage now where you can pretty much get any program you want commissioned? Do you just wake up in the morning and think, oh, that would be great, I'm going to do that, let's go to the Rift Valley in Ethiopia. Oh, yeah, I'll phone the BBC, they'll write me a cheque. Are you currently riding the crest of that wave of popularity?
No.
Tell the truth.
No. They're quite...
Cox.
They're very difficult to come up with these things, actually. They go through this whole process. But this one was a very simple... Once you see the right idea, then it looks simple. And this idea of telling the story of humanity, I think, from a scientific perspective, is a simple idea.
Did you have any ambitions in this direction? Because, I mean, it's well documented, the curious path that you took towards academic life involving pop stardom and the like. But did you ever have any... Do you have the look at me gene that most people in the business have, the sort of slightly overdeveloped show-off?
I don't think so. I mean, I as you say, I had been in a band. I just wanted to be a pop star. I think when I was 15 or 16, I just used to watch Duran Duran and people like that and think, I want to be that. So who wouldn't want to be in Duran Duran in the 1980s? All right. There's a bands I grew up with.
Adam and the Ants.
Adam and the Ants, yeah. Wham. I don't know. But not Culture Club. No. Yeah, but then I left that. And at the age of about 23, I left it. And I was very happy being a scientist. And I got back involved with the media, actually, as a result of a funding crisis that we had. We had a huge mistake that was made back in 2007 with physics funding. And I got very exercised about that because I actually believe that, and this is part of the QE Prize for Engineering as well, that one of the pillars of our economy, one of the foundations of our future is in being excellent at science and engineering. So I got back into doing interviews, as really lobbying and shouting about this mistake that the government made in physics funding, in particular in 2007. And sort of I think I went on Newsnight a few times, and the BBC noticed me. I think.
Wow, here's a scientist who doesn't look like they've just stepped out of 1954 or something like that.
Well, yeah, I look like I've stepped out of the 60s. It was a ridiculous haircut. Yeah, but so that was it really. So I was drawn back in and then given this opportunity.
But it's the same discipline. Programs. I mean, it is. You might have 100 people in a lecture theatre or 8 million people watching a television program. It's the same skills you need to communicate your enthusiasm to the audience.
To an extent. So I mean, as you'll know, as a radio presenter, TV presenter, it's something that you have to learn. I mean, people won't believe us talking now, but there is a skill
Craft.
You have to learn. There is, and so I was lucky actually to be nice to the BBC for once. What they do is that they've allowed a lot of academics to come through and make mistakes.
They've nurtured you. They've let you grow up in public, as it were.
Alice Roberts as well,
yes.
and Ian Stewart, and you can list quite a few of them. Marcus de Sauton, Jim Al-Khalili.
Of course, yes, not necessarily natural performers or overdeveloped show-offs, but they've developed, as you have, this remarkable facility to communicate. Speaking of communicating, someone's listening to this. I've got 2 little girls at home, and they're not girly girls. They're always very keen to tell me we're not girly girls. We spent ages trying to find a bike for the eldest that wasn't pink. Yeah. And she described herself as really liking science, which is a big surprise to her parents because we don't know one end of a test tube from the other. But it's something we're keen to encourage from a position of surprising ignorance. So what do you say to someone like me, someone listening to this who's got a daughter who's older and thinks, do you know what, engineering might be just the right thing for them, but I don't know where to go?
You can be, well, so the QEprize.org website actually is, because we're focusing on girls girls and women in engineering, there are a series of videos on there of female engineers talking about what excited them and their career paths. What I would say is you're on safe ground with your kids. I mean, I've got a little boy who's nearly 5, and because there is such an enormous shortage of scientists and engineers in the economy, if they fancy it and they enjoy it, it's a broad career, but it's also a very safe bet. Because we need...
In terms of parental concerns about their future security...
We're going to be 500,000 engineers short.
Why? I mean, just briefly, because we're going to run out of time. If you had to give me the thumbnail answer to how we've allowed this to happen, what would your answer be?
Well, I think it's lack of investment at the university level, lack of investment in encouraging kids to go into science and engineering, complacency, because we've had enough. The point is, there's a big demographic problem now, because a lot of engineers in particular are older, and they're going to retire over the next decade, and we've not had the foresight to plan for replacing them until now. And that now suddenly you see that 43% of our economy is based on what's called knowledge-intensive services.
And that can only grow, really, as we're not a manufacturing nation anymore. And you know, as you speak, I wonder whether, and correct me if I'm wrong, is this relevant to conversations we've had about maybe not so much the space race, but certainly nuclear power and the fact that we don't have the ability here. We have to go to France or China for the money, France for the expertise, if we want to build a nuclear power station.
Which is a recent problem.
All linked to this.
We were the best. We were the pioneers, and we've lost it. And we've got there's a tradition in this country, to some extent, unfortunately, of losing the lead. But we have to take it back, as you rightly say. We can't compete on resources. We can't compete on cheap labour, and neither should we want to do that. We can compete, though, in scientific and engineering excellence.
And you can find out more at QEprize.org. QEprize.org. Find out more about the prize itself, but also about the sort of the second string agenda, which is to draw more young people, particularly young female people, into the world of engineering. And you know, as a parent, just that thing, you know exactly what you're doing. That notion that you've got a better guarantee of getting a good job at the end of an engineering degree than you have at the end of a media studies degree is something that should be tattooed on the foreheads of lecturers everywhere. Professor Brian Cox, thank you so much. Pleasure. I wish we had longer. I look forward to the next time. This is LBC. I'm James O'Brien. We'll do it again tomorrow from 10. Here is Julia Hartley-Brewer.
Thank you very much indeed, James. Coming up later in the show, should we be betting on the outcome of the Oscar Pistorius trial in South Africa? That's what Paddy Power suggests we should do.